Headless Knight. Starting with the witch's head introduction. Hedera travels through the game world, but upon opening his eyes, he has already lost his own head. And the witch Angelia lost her body. The two hit it off at once. Alchemy. Directly heat up weapons and Gundam. Headless Knights and Witches use alchemy to slightly reduce the dimensionality of this game world. The world change began from here. Heydra. What Headless Knight? I'm the mount, right? Angelia. My armor is good, but it's not easy to secure my head. Hey, don't touch it randomly. Hedera. What are you afraid of? Every part of your body was handcrafted by me. Chapter 1. Headless Traverse and Headless Witch. You are listening at Novel Full.Audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push. In October of the 196th year of the Reims calendar, Reims Empire, Saint Glory City. Today's Reims Empire has two major celebrations. One is that a massive rebellion has finally come to an end, and the last leader of the Delk family is about to be beheaded. The second is that the most evil witch has been caught and is about to be burned. On the execution ground, under the knife, one of the protagonists of today's event, Hedera, was covered in blood and wounds. He had already been tortured and fainted before going to the execution ground. Pain comes from the whole body. Hedera opened her eyes and saw the blood-red earth, with cheers in an unknown language constantly ringing in her ears. He wanted to take out his phone for the first time, but found that his hands and feet were tied up, and his back was pressed hard, unable to move. He lifted his head slightly and saw the colorful hair colors, mainly black and gray linen clothes. Is this filming? No, I was just playing games, wasn't I? This is the last thought that flashed through his mind. Immediately, his gaze spun around, and he finally saw a headless body spewing with blood. He finally understood that he had traveled, and he was also the unlucky traveler who had not lived for a minute. Hedera's consciousness did not dissipate as a result. It is said that the brain is the center of human consciousness, but he increasingly cannot feel the location of his head. His field of vision is pitch black, and his world is silent, but consciousness still exists. The only thing he still has is his sense of touch. The ropes on his hands and feet make him feel pain, but he is unable to break free. After an unknown amount of time, night gradually fell. Usually, in order to deter civilians, the bodies are exposed for 3 days after being executed, so no one comes to collect them, and few people come to the execution square to seek bad luck. In the center of an empty square, flies have fallen all around Hedera. A wisp of black mist drifted out of the body of the fly that had just landed and was absorbed by Hedera. The black mist moves freely and can absorb vitality for Heydra to use. His vision gradually recovers, and his injuries are quickly healing. The world of black and white unfolded in his consciousness, and he was even able to distinguish the breath left by each person below. However, this is far from enough. He is now so weak that he cannot even break free from the rope. He expanded his vision, and the flames of the executing witch on the side also extinguished, leaving only a pile of ashes. He searched around but did not see the location of his head. Suddenly, there was movement amidst the nearby ashes, and Hedera's heart was filled with joy. When everything in the ashes came out completely, his surprise instantly turned into terror. That was a petite bald head, with a delicate expression that revealed a hint of childishness. Despite having no hair or eyebrows, it was also a delicate face, clearly the head of a woman. These are not the main points. The bald person gave birth to several tentacles, which were used as support and were quickly running, jumping up and firmly rooted in Hedera's neck. Hedera was powerless to resist, his hands and feet were still tied, and the black mist could not break through the magic's defense. Hedera thought a lot about occupying his body and taking things away, but nothing happened. He only felt the rope being untied and the bald head on his neck speaking. Don't get excited, if this continues, we will all die. Your head has been burned to ashes. Although I don't know why you haven't died yet, this state cannot be maintained for too long. We need to cooperate. First, let me introduce myself. My name is Angelia. Nice to meet you, Mr. Heydra. Angelia's voice has an unexpected childishness, which of course is something that Hedera cannot hear now. The voice he hears now leans more towards a digital message. Her expression was not as calm as she appeared, and she could not maintain such a state for too long. Although she didn't know why Hedera could move even after losing her head, she had no choice and needed someone to provide her with magic. The remaining magic was used by her to untie the rope, and her eyelids began to fight. No, you're not Hedera. There's no magic in your body, it seems like you're going to die this time. Angelia suddenly widened her eyes, fell off her neck, gritted her teeth, and bounced a few times on the ground. Heydra reached out and picked up her bald head, but her inner peace became even more difficult. Angelia, a witch with only one head. Isn't this the game Witch's Alchemy Workshop that I played before time travel? I time travel into the game, but unfortunately, I time travel right after playing, and I don't know the plot behind it. Spoiler dog roommate seems to have said that we need to go to the secret room of the Royal Academy Library to find the alchemy artifact at the beginning. In the end, the witch seems to be using an alchemical body, so my head should also be able to be refined. Of course, Heydra made up her mind to play this game mainly because of the white-haired witch. My name is Hedera, my surname is Hedera, and my predecessor's name was Hedera without a surname. My predecessor was just a homeless person who lived a simple and straightforward life, earning alms from the church through disguise. I don't even know why I was beheaded in the capital now. Also, there seems to be a memory of my predecessor, Angelia, who heard about it 4 or 5 years ago in the church. At that time, she was still a preparatory nun in the church, so she became a witch. Game. Time travel. Also, aren't you Heydra Delk? It's all over, there's no magic to supplement it, not to mention using alchemy to heal your entire body. Now even surviving is a problem. Angelia looked up and down at Heydra. Facing a man without a head, she did not know where to look. Although she was extremely curious about the information revealed in Hedera's heart, what she wanted more was to live. Mind-reading skills. I think I'm using Chinese now, right? Can I understand it by looking for Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com? A thought flashed through Hedera's heart, and he cleared his mind, holding his bald hands tightly. Take it easy, don't get excited, I'm going to die anyway. I've been able to understand the language of animals since I was young, understand the will of all things, and I'm not limited by language. Reading the mind is not possible, you're the exception. Unlike reading the mind, it's up to you. As long as you don't want me to hear it, I can't perceive any of your thoughts. Angelia squinted her eyes and exclaimed in pain. So, I'm not really human anymore. Dead. Aren't you still living well now? If the witch can die so easily, then the game cannot continue from the beginning. In the original game, it was the players themselves who provided magic and alchemy. But now, no one has arrived at the square, let alone alchemists. If you are Heydra Delk, no, even a first-order wizard or knight, I can get magic supplements. But you have no magic at all, I will only consume your vitality, and if this continues, we will all die. Angelia's voice became increasingly weak, her eyes narrowed into a slit, not only due to the exhaustion of magic, but also due to inner exhaustion and despair of the status quo. Heydra stared earnestly at the witch in her hand, paused for a moment, with no expression on her face and no thoughts in her heart. The pale moonlight quietly fell, and Angelia felt a dead silence. She didn't read any thoughts from Hedera. Suddenly, she felt lifted up. Sure enough, it's about to be thrown away. Humans are like this, carrying kindness but being able to do things that harm others. It's also good, living in the human world is really tiring. Angelia closed her eyes. Chapter 2. One corpse two life, be careful. You are listening at novel full.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, Angelia was put back to her neck by Hedera. I am not an ungrateful person. If you don't untie me, I will have to starve here. Let's absorb my vitality first, and I can use this black mist to supplement it. Heydra will not starve to death for the time being, and he can still sustain himself for 1 or 2 days. Even if he is partially absorbed by Angelia, he only needs to replenish it in time through the black mist to sustain the survival of the two. Shenghui City, also known as the Holy Capital, is the religious center of this world, where people like Heydra beg for a living are everywhere. Even in the Holy City, night does not belong to humanity, and the only light in the view now comes from the church on the mountaintop. The church is built around the Holy Spring, which is one of the earliest miracles in the legend of the Church of Destiny. It flows out of the Holy Spring mountain and forms a small stream that spans the entire city. It is the only source of water for many beggars and even civilians to drink and wash. Hydra's primary target is beggars, and it is common for them to die on the streets, and no one cares how they die. He pulled up the tattered linen clothes, covering his clearly defined neck, and then left the execution square with one hand supporting his neck. Thank you, I thought. Unseen power can indeed absorb vitality. You used this to attack me from the beginning, and if there were not magic left at that time, I would have died. However, its true function is to extract elements, and life is just one of the elements. So, I didn't help you anything, your black mist can easily untie the rope. Angelia slowly opened her eyes, but halfway through, she suddenly changed the topic. The fist-sized black mist inside Hedera's body reduced by a strand, less than 1/10 of the total amount, which was absorbed by Angelia. And then it continued to gradually decrease, which was the cost of his survival. He had no time to take into account the elements mentioned by Angelia, but only remembered the name in his heart. Don't continue. My vitality can last for 2 more days, no need, if you don't use magic, it's enough. I'm not someone who takes things from others without restraint. Although you have this power, you can't abuse it. Angelia has regained some energy, but her fatigue comes from her soul. She really wants to sleep like this, but it's not now. Hydra's body injury has fully recovered, but there is no heartbeat and his skin is pale. Fortunately, there are no vampires in this world, otherwise anyone who sees him would immediately report it to the church. In the city of Shenghui, there are numerous divine magic barriers, and what Hedera can confirm is that he does not belong to dark creatures, otherwise he will be directly purified. His revived perception does not include his sense of smell. Moreover, the most important thing is that he is unable to speak up now, as if he should be grateful that the witch can understand his thoughts, otherwise he would have to find a pen and paper to communicate with the witch. No, there isn't enough paper and pen. My predecessor was still illiterate and he doesn't know the language of this world. Heydra walked along the river, his target being a lonely beggar, and his modern consciousness made him somewhat resentful of killing, even if it was a beggar to be killed. Occasionally passing by in small groups, Angelia remained silent. Today is the day of execution for some people, and it is also a day of celebration for the people. Normally, when it gets dark, the streets are mostly deserted, but today they are in groups of 3 or 2, and for a while, they can't find anyone left alone. The beggar over there, come over here. A green-haired man was burping while drinking, dressed in linen and wool-woven clothes adorned with simple embroidery. However, there were finger-long notches and simple patchwork marks on his chest. He is a declining aristocrat. After shouting, he turned to his 5 tattered companions and said, "You all don't believe in my strength and dare not fight me, so I'll fight him. Master Joseph, let's say goodbye." "Yeah, you're all drunk. It's better not to fight anymore." The friends around the green-haired man verbally dissuaded him, but no one pulled him, and his mouth was even more smiling. When Joseph is sober, they are like a punching bag. Just because they don't want to take action doesn't mean they don't want to see Joseph in trouble. The beggar across from him, although his face was too delicate, had a strong physique. Joseph, who was less than 1.7 meters tall, only reached his chest when he stood straight. You all look down on me, but my family gave me the White Crow badge of the college. 1 year later, I will become a 5th-level professional. Joseph fumbled and took out a silver white badge from his pocket, swaying it briefly before quickly retracting it. The White Crow emblem is the admission badge of the Royal Academy of Castor, which is a privilege prepared by the Academy for the nobility. People with badges can take the entrance exam at any time and enter the college to study if they pass. Of course, the test is just a formality for the nobility. This is what he has been dreaming of and finally got it today, so he is very happy. And it's a double celebration. Another happy thing is that the person died and was beheaded on the execution ground. Unfortunately, he did not have a chance to see the scene and was delayed in obtaining the White Crow badge. But it's not a big problem, he's still very happy. So, he only has 2 things to do today. One thing is drinking because of joy. One thing is fighting because of joy. One thing is to humiliate the body of that person because of joy. Now Joseph has to do the second thing, and he immediately points to Hedera and says, "If you win, then this is yours." This refers not to a badge, but to a gold coin pulled out of another pocket with a circle drawn on the ground. The bread bought with that gold coin is enough for him to eat for a month. Of course, he can't eat it for a year now, and his body functions have all come to a standstill. If there were no extraordinary world, Heydra felt confident in himself, even though he was very weak now. The extraordinary power of this world is monopolized by the nobility and the church, and finding a book garden www.zhaozuiyuan.com is not something that a beggar can reach. Can you defeat him with your magic? Hedera asked in his heart, facing the unknown. He had no bottom in his heart. Angelia shook her head. Killing is simple, with only one head, it's too difficult to control the force. Shake your head. If you don't agree, you have to agree. Take the call. Joseph's fist lit up, leaving no time for the strong man in front of him to prepare. He directly punched the beggar's head, although this action even required him to jump up. Be careful. Angelia reminded that Joseph's fist was weak and powerless in her eyes, without any threat, even though she had very little magic left. But if Joseph attacks Hedera's body, she will be powerless. A light appeared in Heidelberg's black and white field of vision, extending from Joseph's brain to his fist, and Joseph's movements slowed to the extreme in his eyes. He reached out to grab it, and the black mist invaded from his hand. The light on Joseph's hand dissipated, and he let out a scream while holding his right hand. The black mist with a big fist grew stronger in a circle, and Hedera did not intend to kill. It was not kindness, but rather difficulty in taking action in front of everyone. Joseph couldn't understand what was happening, and the beggar in front of him only scratched lightly without using magic, cutting off his magic. In his understanding, even church divine attacks require the use of magic. He did not see any abnormal existence, he did not feel any energy, as if this disgruntled beggar relied on the power of his body to cut off his magic. But this is impossible. Looking at the tall figure far away in front of him, he chased after him. Chapter 3. Coach, I want to learn magic. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push. Hedra's field of vision has no blind spots, and even various parts of his body can be seen clearly from all directions. He has gained recognition of his own strength and is no longer afraid. This green-haired man is just a vegetable chicken, and he rushed towards him to deliver vegetables. The expected attack did not arrive. Joseph rushed to Hedera's body, knelt down on one knee, and hammered his chest with his left hand, saying, "Teacher, please teach me the trick I just did." He doesn't know what it is, but it doesn't affect his understanding that power is not simple. Although he was bowing to his master, Joseph did not take the beggar in front of him seriously. He did not even ask for the name of his future master, nor did he even report his own name. Heydra looked at the green-haired man in front of him in surprise, not realizing that his sudden transformation was a violation. Heydra himself didn't fully understand the black mist, and he couldn't teach even if he wanted to. But his dilemma is not whether to teach or not, but whether to draw more vitality. Angelia frowned and whispered. "Kill him." Joseph's malice could not be concealed in Angelia's eyes. Before Hedera could react, Joseph looked up in surprise, but his left hand extended forward and a strong white light burst out from his palm. He was originally planning to do two things, but since a year ago, when he was broken in his third leg by a man named Headless, he has become a laughingstock among nobles and even commoners. He swore to return all the humiliation. For this, he wants to become stronger, by any means possible, even if that person is already dead. He would rather endure humiliation in order to become stronger. I have all humbly become a disciple like this. How dare you refuse me, just a beggar? This is not the first time he has done it, and he has learned some magic through this method, but none of them are suitable for him. Because it's not strong enough. Although he now has the key to the Royal Academy, a powerful magic can give him a huge advantage in the early stages. He won't miss such an opportunity. I've given you a chance, Joseph whispered in his heart. Angelia couldn't help but squint her eyes and yawn, gaining a certain understanding of Hedera's strength. She was no longer worried about losing her life. The several civilians who followed Joseph were all in a battle of 5 scumbags, all of whom hugged their eyes and howled in sorrow. In their impression, Joseph did not have such ability, otherwise they would have prepared early. The person from afar looked curiously towards this side, but quickly moved away their tearful eyes. As a user of the 4th level alchemy item, Glow Star, Joseph is not affected by strong light. He looked at the beggar with squinted eyes and smiled triumphantly. His shame has become a thing of the past, and today is a turning point in his life, the beginning of his good luck. Heydra only felt a slight increase in brightness in his field of vision, but there was no discomfort at all. If it weren't for the inability to control the witch's head, he would have laughed even more recklessly than Joseph. A black mist drifted silently out of his hand, circling around and invading from the back of Joseph's head, targeting his magical center, brain. Joseph was completely unaware, he could not even observe the presence of black mist. He only felt that he had the chance to win, and now all he had to do was take a step forward, concentrate his magic on his left hand, punch the beggar who had brought him shame in front of him to the ground, and torture him to death. The laws of the empire and the laws of the church are aimed at the nobility, who can openly vent their anger. The first punch was still aimed at his face, and he had long been displeased with this delicate bald head. A majestic man with such a feminized head is like himself. This is a shame. Kneel down and beg for mercy. Joseph was confident and down to earth, feeling that jumping up and hitting someone was also a form of humiliation. Angelia didn't speak, she reciprocated kindness with kindness and malice with malice. With only one head left, she finds it difficult to cast many spells, and her current actions also consume Hedera's vitality. It's better for Hedera to do them herself. Heydra really wanted to give Joseph a white eye, but unfortunately the eyes on his body did not belong to him. He could only show the highest contempt towards Joseph and turned his back. Black mist has quietly completed its attack. Joseph was still wondering why the beggar suddenly opened his eyes, turned around, and suddenly stiffened and fell to the ground. Black mist crawled out of his head, and with a sudden pause, it turned to Joseph's pocket, scraping out the badge and 3 gold coins, including the one on the ground, and then pushing the body into the holy creek. The strong light dissipated, and everyone carefully observed the scene through the straight seam, only to see the back of a tall beggar, while Joseph disappeared without a trace. Look, he's in the water. Joseph's civilian companions stretched their necks, their astonishment, fear, joy, and immensely complex emotions squeezing their faces. What is that? Why is he taking on a bad breath? They even forgot to confirm Joseph's life and death, just watching this strange scene from a distance. Heydra was also extremely surprised and turned around under Angelia's urging. Josephus in the Holy Creek constantly emitted black energy, searching for the book garden www.zhaozuiyuan.com, and then continuously dissipated under the influence of the divine magic barrier. The stream water seemed to boil. Unlike Hydra's black mist, the original black mist gave him a feeling of nothingness, while the black mist that absorbed a lot of vitality gave him a feeling of vitality. The black aura on Joseph's body was completely opposite, filled with the aura of death and corruption. Hedera is not sure what it is, but he can glimpse a hint from the reaction of the divine spell barrier, which is definitely not a good thing. In the church, although there is also corruption and power struggles, divine arts are still reliable. That's the aura of hell. Didn't you say that hell will invade in 3 years? Why did it appear now? Angelia was originally just curious, but suddenly became energized and stared at the corpse in the Holy Creek, asking softly. She suddenly realized that Heydra was not the rebel leader, but just a beggar, and had no knowledge of this information. So, he continued to explain in a low voice. The hellish aura is almost imperceptible and only erupts after death, a characteristic that only comes into contact with enchanters. Enchanters, on the other hand, are people who coexist with hellish creatures, and they are easy to distinguish. She pondered for a moment. But thousands of years ago, the gates of hell were closed, and by now there should be no living hell creatures on earth. Where did enchanters come from? Leaving aside the hellish aura for now, should we run away? The church members should come over soon to check if the divine spell barrier is activated. Angelia's expression stiffened as she nodded and said. Indeed, let's run quickly. Run. Where are we going? A paladin dressed in silver armor has already descended from the sky, leaving 2 deep pits on the marble slab by the creek. Chapter 4. Your name. You are listening at novel full.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, the sword of Saint Nightswat has been unsheathed, his eyes fixed on Joseph in the stream, but Yu Guang has been paying attention to the beggar who said he wants to run. The corpses in the Holy Creek did not undergo any transformation, but were imbued with the aura of hell, indicating that they were in contact with enchanters. There were no enchanters on site, but there was an extremely suspicious person. In this era, most people cannot eat enough, not to mention beggars, even ordinary nobles cannot develop this physique. The beggar in front of him, although having a petite bald head, was 1 head taller than him. Dressed in rags, but completely devoid of the lowly appearance that beggars should have, he showed no fear in front of himself as a paladin. No matter in appearance or figure, there is no beggar-like appearance at all. He is certain that this person has a problem. The most important thing is that this face, with its agile blue eyes, feels a bit familiar to him. Who are you and what happened here? Swat took a step forward with his left foot and held his sword in both hands. Whenever there was a movement, he would not hesitate. Hydra's understanding of this world is based on his predecessor, but his predecessor was just a beggar waiting to die in the church. He only knew that paladins were very powerful beings, but he did not know the division of strength, nor did he know how strong they were. However, the paladin in front of me is an insurmountable mountain in terms of grandeur. He had a premonition that if he used black mist to attack the paladin, it would definitely be like attacking a witch. This is the biggest crisis since his travels. No, his predecessor was just a beggar. Now that his head has changed, it's impossible for anyone to know him. Angie. My name is Angie. Hydra's heart almost jumped to her throat, if it could still beat. He almost thought Angelia was going to give her real name, but fortunately she stopped in time. Among ordinary people, her name is unknown. However, in the church, her name is not only widely known, but at least considered a well-known figure. After all, she had lived in the church for 2 years, even though the church had been reduced to ashes. Angelia suddenly stopped talking because she realized this. That noble old man inexplicably said he wanted to fight me, lost, and even said he wanted to apprentice, and then suddenly a strong flash of light made it impossible for us to open our eyes. When we recovered, we saw him fall and still emitting black gas. We don't know what happened, don't believe me, ask them. Hyde held hands to guide, but Angelia still carried out some unnecessary processing on her own. But at least it makes sense. Although Swat suspected this strange beggar, the most important thing now is to investigate the origin of the hellish aura. He was originally patrolling along the Holy Creek, and when he saw the flash, he charged straight up. A 4th-level alchemy item, its effect is only equivalent to 3rd-level magic and cannot affect the visual perception of a 5th-level paladin. In his eyes, Joseph died inexplicably, and then the fallen body suddenly shifted and fell into the Holy Creek. Throughout the process, this strange beggar even turned his back to Joseph. The church does not act like the nobility. They need the support of the common people and need to establish faith and authority among them. This is also the reason why they have been providing unconditional relief to beggars. Of course, this is also the reason why Hedera was able to grow tall and powerful. This is also the reason why Chengdu has become the city with the most beggars. All of you come over to me and undergo my exploratory examination. Swat shouted loudly, this is a routine. The establishment of authority lies not only in kindness, but also in his ability to resist. At the command of the Holy Knight, the common people and even the small nobles around all followed, and even the people on the other side of the Holy Creek ran towards them in a flurry. As for why Swat needed to call everyone over, it was because his divine exploration technique was only at level 0, and the distance he could explore was only 1 meter around his body. According to the potential theory of this world, a person's total potential is limited, so in addition to their major, they must try to learn as little as possible about unnecessary things. So, his state is the norm in this world. In Swat's understanding, there is only one person who is an exception, and that is the most demonic woman. She has cultivated all the low-level magic taught to higher levels, almost challenging everyone's understanding. Unfortunately, such a genius ultimately betrayed the church and ended up at the stake, with no bones left. The church has a lot of experience with cremation, and even has a specialized incendiary agent that can burn bones to the bone without leaving a single piece. As the breeze blows, the sinners who turn into ashes in the cremation will eventually be absorbed by the barrier and become the nutrients that maintain the barrier. This is the last mercy of the church, the last redemption of sinners. Every pope has praised this genius-like design. As a paladin, Swat also strongly agrees with this. His strength is only an ordinary 5th level in the outside world, but in the holy city, with the bonus effect of the divine spell barrier, he can use the book garden www.zhaoshuyuan.com to unleash his strength beyond the average 6th level. Of course, this does not affect the fact that his holy divine detective has a range of only 1 meter, after receiving a bonus from the divine spell barrier. If the hellish creatures themselves are as prominent as the bright moon in the human world, then enchanters need to be carefully identified like eels mixed in loaches, and infected individuals affected by enchanters are counterfeit products that need to be opened one by one to see. Even the infected person themselves will not know when they were infected. Fortunately, this infection may not break out for decades, and for most civilians it could be a lifetime. Hell creatures have not been traced for hundreds of years, and if it weren't for the church's recent resurgence, Swat wouldn't have reacted so quickly. The senior members of the church seem to have anticipated that in addition to daily prayers, learning about hell knowledge would be added to daily mandatory courses. Swat believed that this must be a divine revelation from the Pope or His Highness the Virgin, a precursor to disaster. However, no matter what kind of disaster it is, even if hell reappears on earth, it is still vulnerable to the church. Swat was full of confidence, his eyes and silver-armored palms shining with white light, and he reached out to the heart of the person in front of him. Hedera suppressed the urge to run, and now he runs without resorting to self-deception. With the style of a paladin, he will not be given another chance to defend himself, nor will he be given a chance to go to the execution ground again. Only one corpse will be left at the scene. Heydra is able to function normally after losing his head, but he cannot be certain whether his body will still survive after being scattered. In his field of vision, the paladin shone white, a light similar to the power in Joseph's head, but not on the same level. Chapter 5. Borrowing Your Identity 1 Use. You are listening at Novel Full.Audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push. Hedra's extraordinary strength now lies entirely in the black mist. Although it is relatively easy to cut off Joseph's attack, completely breaking through the magical defense line in his mind is not so easy. He turned his back not to pretend, but to prepare to run and delay time. In the field of vision, this dazzling paladin is clearly not something that black mist can handle. Heydra just looks like a person, his normal appearance floats on the surface, and he doesn't have most of the physiological elements such as a normal person's heart rate, pulse, and blood flow. Swat's right hand was placed on Hedera's chest, and all he needed to do was go further, which was his exploration range. What he doubted the most was Hedera, and there was no need to be close and far. Naturally, he had to start with him to avoid unnecessary complications. Is there any magic like cardiac resuscitation that makes me look like a normal person? Angelia understands Hedera's concerns very well, but she really doesn't understand what cardiac resuscitation is, and there are no similar spells in both magic and magic. Even with extraordinary powers, the understanding of the human body in this world is still very limited. Rather, it is precisely because of their extraordinary power that the energy of capable researchers is actually dispersed. The pursuit of personal strength is the mainstream in this world. Heydra even thought of using black mist to simulate heartbeat, but after trying it out, he had to give up. Although black mist can be manipulated at will and condensed into various shapes, it cannot precisely control other objects through black mist. It can only make the heart tremble, but cannot beat properly. The problem with him is not only his heartbeat, but also the lack of blood flow, which is an area that black mist is completely powerless in. He can only accumulate the black mist and launch a full blow when necessary. He felt the reduced black mist in his body, and he understood that Angelia had her own possible solution. You let go of the enchanter and still want to check me. Who gave you the courage to open your eyes and see who I am? Angelia's words were full of holiness and majesty, with a tone that was completely different from usual. Her voice was ethereal and pleasant, and it sounded like a hymn to everyone. In Hedra's body, the black mist instantly reduced his fist by half, but for him now, this amount is already insignificant. Swat's outstretched right hand suddenly paused and quickly withdrew. The flat chest of the strong man suddenly turned into a giant peak, and the ragged attire of the beggar suddenly turned into holy white armor. The beggar in front of me turned into a saint. Swat took a half step back, sheathed his sword, knelt down on one knee, and said, Saint Knight Swat's visit to His Highness the Virgin hindered Her Highness, and I deserve to die 1,000 times. If Your Highness the Virgin gives orders and punishments, I will do everything. His Highness the Virgin is something he dares not look up to, a presence on par with the Pope in the Church of Destiny. He had no doubt about the appearance of His Highness the Virgin Mary, only marveling at Her Highness's continued foresight. She must have already discovered the presence of the infected person before disguising herself and killing them. And he actually sabotaged His Highness the Virgin's plan, which is truly a crime worthy of death. No wonder he felt familiar, it must have vaguely revealed the majesty of His Highness the Virgin. Although Swat knelt on one knee, it made people feel like he was going to bury his head in the ground. The people on the side also quickly bent down to salute, and the whispers of discussion instantly quieted down. On his lowered head, there were faces of shock and doubt that were difficult to conceal. Give me your holy emblem, you go check the body, I have important matters. Angelia breathed a sigh of relief and her tone softened. She was also not good at such things. Without any hesitation, Swat took out a silver white badge from his pocket. It is engraved with a river, and a sword is inserted on the riverbank, indicating his identity as a silver radiant paladin. Heydra understood and took the badge. He has been wandering in Holy Glory City for many years and naturally has heard of the holy emblem. It represents a certain identity and is usually distributed to paladins and their followers. After leaving Hedera for a long time, Swat, who was kneeling on one knee, finally breathed a sigh of relief. If the Virgin blamed him and sentenced him to death, he could only claim it. However, at this moment, a carriage stopped not far away, and the Archbishop of Devon, who was slightly higher than others, pulled open the curtain of the carriage. A woman then walked out. She was dressed in white battle armor, and her rare black hair flowed down like a waterfall. The interweaving of black and white added a touch of mystery, and it was Saint Flora. They came precisely because of the trigger of the divine spell barrier. Swat felt like his head was about to explode, and these few minutes of experience were richer than his entire life. First, the hellish aura that had not appeared for hundreds of years reappeared in the holy city, then he met a strange beggar who suddenly became His Highness the Virgin, and now he saw Her Highness the Virgin coming off the frame. He just breathed a sigh of relief and swallowed it again. Halfway up, he knelt down again. He bowed his head and dared not say much. Saint Knight Swat, see Her Highness the Virgin, Archbishop of German. As soon as the people watched the Virgin leave, they heard the Holy Knight bowing in the direction behind them. They turned back one after another, bowing while unable to resist discussion. Isn't the saint just leaving? Why did she come from here again to find the Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com? Yeah, does anyone dare to impersonate a saint? Shoo, don't speak recklessly. No matter how quietly the people discuss, they cannot deceive the extraordinary. German frowned and asked Swat, what's going on? Swat knew that he could no longer conceal it. No, why did I hide it? So with the cooperation of the people, Swat explained the matter in its original form. Devon's big head swayed for a moment, wanting to get angry, but then stopped and turned his questioning gaze to the nearby Saint Flora. Flora maintained her usual smile, and no one could tell what she was thinking, nor did she speak. The silence did not last too long. It's my person, don't worry about her. Flora's voice was almost indistinguishable from Angelia's simulated illusion, but it appeared more steady. If Swat was granted amnesty, his heart that had been hanging on for a long time finally let go, and his reverence for the Virgin increased a bit. Let's go back. Flora only glanced at the body in the holy creek. You will work under my command in the future, go handle the body first, I have forgotten everything about today. She had already understood the identity of the deceased, and everything behind this matter was clear to her. All she needed now was to continue capturing the enchanter. Archbishop Devon's slightly elevated head emitted invisible waves, and the surprised and skeptical eyes of the affected people gradually turned into confusion. They stood in place until Swat collected the body, and it took them a long time to come to their senses. They looked at each other in confusion and then scattered away. Flora's frame did not return to the church, but instead drove towards the direction of the city gate. Chapter 6. The Magic of Witches. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, the witch used only illusion techniques to escape, without sufficient magical support. If Swat were to take a closer look, she would easily see through, but what she gambled on was not daring to disrespect the Virgin. The power of Saint Flora in the church is faintly surpassing that of the Pope. Is it that simple? You said you were a saint and he believed it. Is he blind? Magic blind Hedera was full of confusion in his heart. In his vision, Angelia's image and voice remained unchanged, and the paladin believed it so. This is called illusion technique. If you provide enough magic, it's not a problem to transform into a divine being. Upon hearing these words, Heydra pondered inwardly. Magic, for me now, isn't it just vitality? The only way I know how to obtain it now is to absorb the vitality of other creatures. If I really want to use such magic, I'll just forget about how much vitality it takes. You cannot kill for the sake of magic. At this moment, the two of them surprisingly had the same idea. Angelia, how did you become a witch? You took the initiative to leave the execution ground because you were afraid of absorbing my life force, and then constantly advised me not to kill for the sake of magic. How could you be called the most demonic woman? The witch. There's nothing to say about this question. However, Angelia did not want to mention her past. Since I don't want to say anything, let's forget it. I'm not interested in the conflict between you and the church. You have already read my thoughts. I suddenly entered this world, all I wanted was to live normally. Our cooperation is also aimed at this, isn't it? You're right, all we're looking for now is to live normally, Angelia said in a voice that was almost only audible to herself, her eyes constantly spinning as she observed the pedestrians around her. In order to save magic, the neck connection is still dominated by Hedera. Black mist requires active erosion to extract its vitality, which can be used as a third hand or even separated into multiple parts. The premise is that Hedera's consciousness can handle it. However, it's just fixing the witch's head and doesn't require any extra energy. The only thing is that he needs to take the initiative to control the action of turning her head. This leads to imperfect cooperation between them. Angelia, don't you have any magic like teleportation or spiritual connection? I haven't heard of this kind of magic before. Is it your so-called knowledge of time travel? If you can tell me the principle, maybe I can reproduce it. However, now I only have one head, and many spells cannot be cast. Angelia's talent is innate. When she was with beasts in the jungle, she learned many magic from warcraft and nature, which was also one of her life-saving assets. Later, in just 2 years of being adopted by the church, he learned all the magic he could come into contact with. The growth rate rules of this world cannot constrain her growth. She can practice all magic to the extreme. However, she was ultimately only one person, possessing magic beyond the limits of ordinary people, and ultimately lost to the strategy of crowds. Her words of not killing people are only aimed at innocent people with good intentions, and she has no room for mercy towards the enemy. This is the law of the witch's jungle. No, those are just fantasies, and I am just an ordinary person who knows nothing. Of course, I am also very interested in magic, alchemy, and so on. Traversing through such things has happened, and it is a world with extraordinary power. No one can tolerate this temptation and willingly become an ordinary person. Although he now possesses the wonderful power of black mist, no one will find himself skilled. Divine arts and magic are just different names, and there's no difference. I can teach you all of these. However, I don't know alchemy either. When I was in the church, I was just a novice nun. Alchemy is handled by a specialized department in the church, so I don't know. I am very skeptical of your claim that alchemy can repair our bodies. What you have lost is an extremely important part like the head, while I am the entire body. Even if the heavenly destiny God's true body comes, I am afraid it cannot be repaired. The alchemy I know of does not have such ability. The alchemy item that Joseph just had in his hand was a 4th level alchemy item, but the power he could unleash was only 3 levels. This is why alchemy is declining today. Of course, the decline of alchemists is for individuals, and it does not mean they are useless. Therefore, both the church and the nobility will cultivate specialized alchemists. Angelia is not a good teacher. She has a natural talent and all magic seems to her no different, it's all so simple. If she were to teach, the most likely thing would be first this way, then this way, and finally this way, that's it. This extremely abstract teaching, coupled with her now having no body and only one head, cannot even perform a demonstration. Of course, the most important thing is that in this world, the brain is the most important organ for condensing magic. Everything starts with meditation, it starts with the brain. Heidra's situation is the first in this world, and there is no Headless Knight he knows of in the hellish creatures found at the book garden www.zhaozuiyuan.com. He is the only Headless Knight, still the one being ridden. However, at this moment, Hedera was still full of longing for the future. He had imagined himself floating in the air, with strong winds and lightning condensing in his commands, and the world changing color with his thoughts. Heydra suddenly remembered that the two of them combined to form a complete person, and to break free from this situation, he had to rely on alchemy. At least from the game introduction in PV, it seems like this. The player who dominates alchemy in the game is the alchemist, not the witch, so Hedera decided to take Angelia's words lightly. Before the journey of Hedera, the game only progressed to the very beginning, where players picked up the head of a witch on the execution ground and used materials to refine a magical prop. That's a beginner's tutorial. He did not come into contact with the methods of alchemy, and only proceeded to the first step of alchemy, extracting the elements. Wait, the word element seems somewhat familiar. Does alchemy in this world start with extracting elements? Do you think my black mist's true ability is to extract elements? Is it helpful for alchemy? Not bad. The key to alchemy lies in extracting and refusing elements. However, the process is complex and I'm not sure. I can't see through your black mist, but you can definitely extract various elements. You need to explore the specific usage yourself. If alchemy is really useful, it's really good news. Angelia's tense face slightly curled up at the corners of her mouth, and her mood also improved. The pain of losing her body was forgotten by her. Coincidentally, I have nowhere to go either. Why don't we follow your instructions and go to the Royal Academy in the capital first, and then make plans? Chapter 7. Just making some extra income. Don't get excited. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push. Although the roommate spoiler mentioned the invasion of Hell 3 years later, he discovered the aura of Hell on the first day of the plot. According to Angelia, when an infected person appears, there must be an enchanter behind it, and no one knows how long it has been lurking or where it has been hidden. Heydra only knew that this world was already filled with danger, not just Hell, but also from humanity. Although he considers himself a human, whether others believe him or not is another matter. In a world with extraordinary power, personal strength is extremely important and one cannot rely on others for personal safety. He suddenly understood the decline of alchemy, but it did not affect his goals and determination. However, Hydra's primary goal has not changed as a result. As Angelia said, they have no better choice now, otherwise they will have to hide in the mountains and forests for a lifetime. Prior to this, he still had some individual problems that needed to be solved, and his physical abnormalities were not just a lack of a head. Angelia, you said there's no way to revive the heart. Is there a way to temporarily cover up my condition? Otherwise every time we encounter an exploratory surgery, we'll have to run away. Metamorphosis should be possible. It can transform the body into other living creatures. If the object of transformation is a human and there is no difference from yourself, then that's fine. However, metamorphosis requires you to learn it yourself. I only have one head, so it's not convenient to use it. It's not convenient now, but we'll talk more about it when we leave the city. As they spoke, the two of them quickly ran to the city gate. The speed is extremely fast, without any breathing, because there is no respiratory system at all, and because the head itself does not require much effort. Why are the guards so strict tonight? Usually, there are only 2 or 3 on duty at night. Is it because of what happened just now? No, the news shouldn't have spread so quickly. Unlike the carnival atmosphere in the city, although the night is already deep, torches are placed every 4 or 5 meters above the city wall, illuminating both the inside and outside of the wall. The soldiers are all full of spirit. In this world, without the strength to be around, going on a long journey is not a choice, especially at night. At this moment, only one team of people and horses were stopped at the city gate. The leader's blue hair was slightly plump, and he was accompanied by 2 people wearing linen clothes, holding long knives, like guards. From the cloth exposed by him when he lifted the carriage, it should be a businessman. A gold coin. When Hedera arrived, he heard these 4 words. A gold coin is also a huge sum of money for merchants. The order received by the soldiers is to prohibit clearance at night, but it does not hinder their flexible execution. 1 person can have 1 gold coin, and 1 copper coin cannot be missing. The soldier repeated it with a very resolute tone. For merchants, 3 gold coins are needed, and this price is enough to deter them. This is the consistent style of soldiers, who use high tolls to persuade people to leave every time a ban is imposed. If someone is really willing to pay, they don't mind making a profit. Although many nobles can afford the expenses, they are not afraid. The soldiers in the Holy City are directly under the jurisdiction and protection of the Church, and they are not afraid of anyone with the support of the Church. Of course, there are different levels of bans, and they can be flexibly operated during regular bans, while no one dares to release a fly during special bans. At this point, they are implementing a regular ban, not a complete ban on entry and exit. All they need to do is launch an exploration technique to check everyone and record entry and exit information. Moreover, the focus of this order is on entering the city. The defending soldiers have no other skills. They are particularly accurate in judging people and money. They have been a bit tight lately, and 3 gold coins were proposed by them after inspecting the goods, which are stuck within the range that makes the merchants uncomfortable but barely acceptable. Do we count as 1 person or 2 people? Hedera could not help complaining to the witch roast. He now has all his assets coming from Joseph, totaling only 3 gold coins. However, at this point it's the paladin's badge that comes into play. Angelia smiled and did not respond. Heydra did not stop his steps, and if that paladin came to his senses, they might have no way to escape, so they could not delay for a moment. A few adults, please do me a favor. Recently, there have been constant wars and business is really difficult to do. I am also very tight on my hands, otherwise I would definitely be more filial to you. Can you please reduce it? When I come back from Wangdu, I will definitely bring some special products to show my filial piety to you. The merchant nodded and bowed respectfully, seeming to be extremely familiar with the soldiers. Of course, his movements and tone were very precise, as if he had rehearsed 1,000 times. Hedera crossed the merchant's carriage and presented the badge he had obtained from Swat directly. The soldiers pounded their chests with their left hands and saluted, saying, "Sir, please." The soldiers knew very well where their power and identity came from, and although the strange man in front of them was dressed in rags and beggars, they dared not neglect him. No one dares to impersonate church members in the Holy City, and they don't even have any suspicious thoughts. They also did not feel embarrassed about breaking the good news, because this behavior was tacitly approved by the church. Angelia didn't speak. Hedera controlled the witch's head and nodded slightly. "Sir, wait a moment." The merchant anxiously shouted from behind, looking for the Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com, which was aimed at Hedera. "Your Excellency, my name is Ors, and as you can see, I am a cloth merchant. This batch of goods was ordered by a prominent figure in the royal capital and should have been transported there long ago. However, due to the war, they were lost twice, and I had no choice but to pay for the goods from my own pocket. Now I am in dire straits, and there are still 7 or 8 people in my family waiting for me to deliver the goods and pay for their meals. Please be kind to me. I see that the adults are walking on the road, and I am willing to use a carriage to transport them. If there is something that the adults are interested in, the small ones are also willing to show filial piety to the adults and ask them to let the small ones go. If we miss the latest delivery deadline, the small ones will have to go. I have lost all my money." Ors spoke, tears streaming down his face, even kneeling and bowing. Hedra's predecessor was at the bottom of society, and he may not have a good understanding of the aristocratic stance, but he has a deep understanding of the plight of the lower class. This businessman named Ors, although he said it was terrible and even shed tears, did not shake his hands, and his facial expressions and movements were completely inadequate. Heydra gave his performance a score of 30. However, they do need a means of transportation on their way. From Chengdu to Huangdu, one needs to cross mountains and ridges, and cross the Tianjianshitu mountain. If it's hiking, it may take 10 days and a half to walk. Promise him. Angelia received Hedera's idea and replied. Come with me. Ors wiped away his tears and immediately turned from crying to laughing. He quickly thanked him a few times and turned his head to summon the guard to pull up the carriage and prepare for the journey. The soldiers did not stop them, but after a brief eye contact, a soldier finally quietly approached Hedera, leaned over his shoulder, and said in a very low voice. This person has some issues, please be careful, sir. Chapter 8. No conflict between rushing and sleeping. You are listening at Novel Full.Audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, Angelia responded softly, her malice and kindness clearly visible in her eyes. Even if she only had a head left, it was not something that just 2-second orders could handle. Therefore, she did not refute the idea that Hedera had agreed to. What Hedera was thinking at this moment was that this person thought he had excellent acting skills, but he didn't expect that he had not even deceived a soldier. Perhaps only he himself was still complacent. In the eyes of the soldiers, although it was a pity that the gold coin had slipped away, it showed its face in front of the paladin. There might be a chance to carry it in the future, so it wouldn't be a loss. So the soldiers returned to their posts, continued to keep their eyes open, and continued to fulfill their duties. On the other side, Heydra and his companions were rushing on their way in the darkness. The carriage is divided into 2 parts, front and rear, with the rear mainly consisting of goods and also serving as a guard for daily life. Judging from the familiarity of the 2 guards with the carriage, they must have been working together for a long time. Among them, one is driving, while the other is resting in the rear compartment and occasionally observing the movement behind. The front carriage is mainly used for residential and storage of daily necessities, including clothing, food, etc., such as dried meat hanging next to it. There is also a square alchemy prop on the top of the carriage for illumination. The roof of the carriage is particularly sturdy, seeming to be suitable for outdoor life. At this moment, in the front carriage, Heydra and Ors were sitting on both sides. The seats in the front carriage were originally several large boxes, serving not only as seats but also as cargo boxes for carrying daily necessities or goods. At night, they became beds. Sir, are you also going to the capital city? Ors asked with a flattering expression on his face. If it weren't for the fact that the person in front of him had indeed presented the paladin's emblem, he wouldn't have believed it. Although this adult is tall and imposing, his face looks less than 20, and he doesn't have eyebrows or hair yet. His head and body contrast, making him look exceptionally unique. The most important thing is that their clothes are too ragged, even the beggars in the holy capital rarely have clothes that are so ragged. Angelia was staring out the window, but Hedera's field of vision was without blind spots. The merchant's repeated glances fell completely in his eyes, but he didn't pay attention. If the other party is calm, it would be better. If there is any malicious intent, he doesn't mind replenishing his energy. Seeing Angelia not responding, she still looked intoxicated by the scenery outside the window. Heydra had to take the initiative to control her neck and nodded. Angelia's eyes wandered around in confusion before regaining consciousness. Ors breathed a sigh of relief in secret, but his expression remained calm without any change, continuing to maintain a false smile. I see that adults' clothes are all torn. I was originally in the fabric business, so if you like it, you can choose some. Of course, I also have finished products here that can be given to you, adults. Ors opened the box under him and found 2 sets of clothing, which was not very good. There are only a few more embroidered patterns and more delicate stitches than ordinary attire. Heydra didn't hesitate and reached out to take the clothes. It's already late at night now, and we'll have to rest in 2 hours' time. If adults get tired, they can take a nap in the carriage first. We have everything we need here, including bedding. Ors pointed to the box under Hedera's buttocks and said. If he hadn't heard Hedera speak at the city gate, he would have thought this adult was mute. Ors, seeing that he seemed unwilling to speak and did not dwell too much, turned around and said goodbye. At this moment, he remembered that he had not even asked the name of this adult. However, none of these are important. 0-level paladins are rare to see in 100 years. Magic or knightly combat skills, once mastered, are at level 0. Then, depending on personal talent, using them more than 10 or dozens of times will eventually grow to level 1. And 0 order basically means that this person has not learned any extraordinary skills. He got up and left the carriage, sat next to the driving guard, and started talking quietly. Heydra, however, utilized this rare tranquility to organize his complex thoughts. He just saw the wanted notice at the city gate, and the name of Headless Knight jumped onto the paper. He has heard of this rebel leader with the same name as himself. The Delk family was a founding hero who fought alongside King Lance File and played an indispensable role in the establishment of the Lance Empire. About a year ago, the Empire suddenly issued a wanted notice for the Delk family. However, no one knows why they suddenly rebelled. At the beginning, the Empire achieved a complete victory over the Delk family and defeated their army in one fell swoop. However, Heydra Delk emerged and led the remaining forces to fight for war, entangled with the Empire for a year. Finally, the Church launched a surprise attack and took it down in one fell swoop. These are known information from their predecessors. At the moment he saw the wanted notice, he finally understood that he had been caught inexplicably, but was just acting as a substitute for the dead. The only thing Heidelberg and he have in common is their name. Moreover, the rebel leader heard that he was still a dwarf. Normally, it is impossible to confuse them, that is, someone intentionally did it. That is to say, its predecessor was the shell of Heydra Delk's golden cicada. So, where is the real Heidelberg Delk? The whereabouts of this rebel leader have nothing to do with him. The only information he has received now is that the Church, which he has been wool harvesting for over a decade, has become less credible. However, the dignity of the traveler also does not allow him to go back and eat this bowl of rice. The Empire, the rebels, the Church, and the book garden www.zhaoshuyuan.com are all not his turn to worry. Heydra sent a signal to Angelia and fell into a deep sleep, his exhaustion being comprehensive in both body and mind. Heydra. Angelia called out softly, but received no response. Her head was still outside the window, feeling a bit cold under the evening breeze. She hadn't felt this way for many years. Although she had a bitter feeling of memories, she didn't want to experience it. Angelia's neck extended a pitch-black tentacle, supporting the window and pushing her head back into the carriage. Bang, a loud bang. Angelia had never had such an experience before. As soon as she pushed her head back into the carriage, she fell on her head. Her body had clothing as a cushion, but her head hit the wooden board straight. She wanted to touch her bald head, but had no hands. The witch's head is iron, but what feels uncomfortable is inside. Ors heard the commotion, but turned his head to see an extremely frightening scene. I saw a tentacle reaching towards the adult's neck. Is there any unknown terrorist enemy attacking? He had never seen such magic before, and the enemy was probably not something they could deal with. Even the adults were silently killed, and they were afraid to die. Subsequently, in the blink of an eye, the tentacles disappeared without a trace. The adult was covered in a piece of clothing, and there was a faint snoring sound coming from his breathing, as if he was asleep. Ors touched his heart as he was about to jump out of his chest with one hand, wiped the cold sweat from his forehead with the other, and gasped for breath. The guard beside twisted their head and asked in confusion. What's wrong? Ors let out a long sigh, sat down again, and said. No, it's okay, I made a mistake. Chapter 9. Please start your performance. You are listening at Novel Full.Audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, the Reims Empire, the Holy Capital, and the Royal Capital are located in the hinterland, and October is the time when the weather suddenly turns cold. However, before Hedera crossed, it was the hottest summer day, and his predecessor was a beggar made of heaven and earth, so he did not consider it too much. Hedera slept, but Angelia didn't. She needs to continue to be vigilant. Although Ors, dressed as a businessman, did not engage in any inappropriate behavior, in the eyes of the witch, their malice was as evident as a towering flame. However, as the night passed, there was no movement at all. Instead, there was occasional noise coming from the forest by the roadside, which quickly subsided. Angelia judged from her own experience that these were all robbers along the way, who bullied the weak and feared the strong. Powerful gangs, they all come out during the day to commit crimes, intercept passing merchants, civilians, and even nobles. Due to the small size of the group, the relocation of positions is very flexible. Every time the noble knights and the church send troops to besiege and suppress, they can only clear the surface. After each clearance, peace can only be maintained for a short period of time. After waiting for 1 or 2 months, the number of robbers increases again, sometimes even more than before. This is the current state of the world. Every time you go on a long journey, if you don't have the strength or hire a dedicated night escort team, you will have no return. No, it's also possible to return, but it's also a smooth return. The robbers are also very principled, usually only seeking wealth and not harming lives. During the day, if they are occupied by a powerful gang of robbers, the weaker ones can only appear at night. They only dared to stare at the unguarded unlucky guy, picking up a few soft persimmons and pinching them. On the Ors carriage, the 2 bright second.order knights, although not very eye-catching during the day, were the best protective umbrellas at night. The movement and stillness in the forest were caused by this, but none of them came to die, which is truly abnormal. I don't seem to be able to sleep. You can sleep. Angelia read Hedera's thoughts and felt even more pain in her head. It must have been more than 10 minutes since he did it on purpose. She muttered her mouth, but suddenly her expression became somewhat gloomy. She responded and closed her eyes. Hedera was not intentional, he was careless. At that time, his mind was completely immersed in the black mist, unable to perceive external objects. He thought that if the soul had to have substance, then the black mist must be. When he threw his consciousness into the black mist, his body lost control, but his thinking ability greatly improved. He even completed the solution of the Schrödinger equation for hydrogen atoms in an instant. The cost is that the vitality of black mist storage is rapidly decreasing. Hedera even suspected that if he controlled the black mist to enter the robot, he could mechanically soar, but unfortunately, there were no robots in this world to experiment with him. Just as he was pondering, the carriage slowly stopped. Ors placed a small glass bottle at the door of the carriage and moved away from the guard. After a moment, they cautiously returned and collected the glass bottle. The 2 of them entered the carriage with wet cloth covering their mouths and noses, leaving only 1 guard outside to watch the wind. Ors held a rope in his left hand, with his back behind him, and lightly tapped Hedera's arm with his right hand. "Your Excellency." He called out in a low voice, afraid of waking someone up. Ors saw no movement from Hedera, so he confidently unfolded the rope and gestured towards him. Hedera, lying on the cargo box, suddenly flipped over, and the rope somehow tied a knot in Ors's hand. Ors and his companions were startled and quickly knelt down. Big. As soon as Ors spoke, he saw Hedera just flipping over without any further action, as if sleeping soundly. Although he wondered that every time he tried the special perfume of Bing Ling, it would make people unable to move, why could this 0-rank paladin still turn over? However, the arrow was already on the string, and there was no room for him to hesitate. With the help of the guards, the 2 spent a while trying to untie the ropes in their hands. Ors is preparing to repeat his old trick. Heydra suddenly kicked his leg, but Ors was so careless that he didn't react and suffered a fatal blow, howling in pain. Ors still doesn't understand, he's been fooled. Angelia opened her eyes and burst out laughing. How could it be? I bought this enchanting incense at a high price, a 4th level alchemy item. That damn guy even said he could enchant a 4th level knight. Kyle, give it to me. Ors is not worried, the opponent is just a 0 order, and even the strongest physical strength cannot withstand the extraordinary. It's just that there are all his own things in this carriage, so he feels cramped when he moves. Ors only felt angry. Firstly, he was attacked by a 0-level sneak attack and injured his lifeline. Secondly, he had always been the only one who cheated, but never expected to be deceived by an unscrupulous businessman. He took off the damp cloth and was furious. Then, he felt his vision becoming increasingly blurred and he fell on his head. The guard, known as Kyle, drew out his sword and as soon as he took a step, he saw Ors lying at his feet. What a useless waste. Kyle stabbed Ors in the chest and found that the floor of the carriage at Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com was stained red with blood, but Ors was unaware of it. He pulled off the wet cloth, threw it aside casually, and drew a long knife towards Hedera. The fragrance in the carriage had not yet dissipated, but unlike Ors, who was about to fall, Kyle's hand holding the knife did not tremble at all. Kid, you've become a paladin in the church but still rank 0. Why don't you follow us? I don't think you're the kind of person who likes to be bound by various rules. There's nothing good about being an ascetic monk, but the church's trick is to deceive people into doing coolies. In Kyle's view, this person has status but no strength, and there is only one possibility, which is the asceticism. The ascetics in the church find it extremely difficult to get started and practice, but the results of their cultivation are extremely slow. The vast majority of ascetics give up halfway. You're right, the ascetics in the church are all trash tormenting themselves, just learning a divine spell. There's no need to go through so much trouble. Angelia strongly agrees with this, as the ascetics in the church are the type of people she finds most incomprehensible. Kyle was first surprised, then his face showed joy. He thought it would take some effort to force this person to submit, but he didn't expect that just a few words would make people agree. It seems that this person is not doing well in the church, and he has not been able to start his asceticism yet. He has already developed a lot of dissatisfaction with the church, otherwise he wouldn't have been at 0 level. What are the benefits of having me join you? Also, who are you? Angelia added after receiving Hedera's idea. Kyle's knife still pointed at Hedera, maintaining vigilance. You don't need to worry about who we are, you just need to know, we can help you quickly gain powerful power. However, he took 2 steps back while speaking, as Ors's blood had already soaked through his shoes. Chapter 10. If you don't know how to recruit, don't recruit. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, Hedra's body was motionless, but the black mist was not idle. Ordinary people seem unable to see the presence of black mist, so he has already released it and absorbed vitality from Ors. In his vision, Ors's vitality and magic were rapidly dissipating, losing the support of consciousness, and the magic could not build a defense line, unable to resist the invasion of black mist. During the communication between Angelia and Kyle, the black mist felt saturated, and the vitality he could absorb had reached its limit. However, the current quantity is still far from enough. For some reason, Kyle's magic increased tenfold in an instant. Perhaps this is the secret, he said, to rapidly enhance one's strength. Hedera could only rely on Angelia. He could only convey information, but could not accept Angelia's thoughts, which left him feeling very uncertain. Angelia's attention is focused solely on rapidly improving her strength. When she was at the city gate, her consciousness quickly swept over, and the 2 guards were of average strength, even inferior to Ors. She didn't pay too much attention. Just now, the guard named Kyle in front of him suddenly changed from 2nd level to 4th level, and his aura underwent a tremendous change. This power is like Hell's aura. Are you creating infections in the holy city? Angelia stared straight at Kyle's chest, as if she was about to kill someone with her eyes. What? Does anyone dare to create infections in the holy city? Kyle's hand trembled, and his long sword almost fell to the ground. The words in his mouth were completely different from what he thought in his heart, and he realized that they were not the only ones to choose. 5 months ago, it was on this road that he and his brother Khan inevitably encountered robbers. This kind of thing is too ordinary, usually only a portion of the property needs to be left to pass smoothly. However, the robbers this time seemed not prepared to spare him. Just as he was in despair, the box under his feet was split in half with a knife, and a strange force surged into his body. That was originally the goods they were transporting this time. Then he felt an irresistible will, and the breath made them tremble. All the robbers were prostrate on the ground. Kyle reaped the lives of the robbers knife by knife, feeling immensely satisfied. The loot of the robber also opened the door to a new world, and he found a job that was more profitable than guarding. He occasionally hears the words of that person, who is the only contractor in this world and the spokesperson for the future hell. Hell has long been a legend, and his impression of it is only evil but also powerful. He didn't want to become a weak person again, so he chose to comply. Several months of war made him realize that his personal power is limited, and he also needs to develop his own power. So, he threw the first olive branch, and of course, he wouldn't argue that he was evil. It must be those evil enchanters who did it. This is a word he recently learned from the holy city, seemingly used to describe humans coexisting with hellish creatures. He doesn't think he belongs to one of them. Kyle rapped his back and cursed at the dead mosquito in his heart before continuing. We are contractors, not comparable to those who succumb to the power of demons. Devil, in the eyes of ordinary people, is synonymous with hell. Although in the records of the church, not only demons live in hell, but even ordinary humans. As for the way this statement is made, he learned it from Ors. Regardless of whether it is possible or not, let's first boast about deceiving people. If you wait for someone to fall into his trap, it won't be too late to back out. You won't have to listen to him then. Angelia looked at Kyle with great interest. His magic is clearly completely imbued with the aura of hell, and his overall strength is controlled by humans, but his state is somewhat abnormal. He only has a partial aura in his body, but there is no real existence of hellish creatures. No wonder it's so weak. According to church research, enchanters are at least 6 levels of existence. Heydra did not have a deep understanding of this, but he had not heard of any contract makers. His predecessor's memory only contained propaganda from the church. He only knew that after being completely eroded by the aura of hell, he would forever be subject to people. Angelia, ask him how many contractors there are. Angelia had not yet exported, but Kyle continued to say. We, as contract makers, control the power of demons for our own use, and any hellish creature is subject to our feet. How about that? Don't say that Hydra doesn't believe him, he himself doesn't believe it. But the cows are blowing up, they always have to blow down. Angelia almost burst out laughing, suppressing her smile and saying. Then your power must be very strong. Will we become corpses like the one under your feet when we join? She couldn't signal with her hands, so she had to tilt her eyes downwards. Angelia is curious about how their poor concealment ability managed to evade the divine spell barrier of the holy city. Even if she were a little more serious, she could detect the hellish aura they were hiding. Has even the church been infiltrated by hell? She just guessed in her mind that it had nothing to do with how to teach at the book garden www.zhaozuiyuan.com. She also didn't speak up to inquire, because she knew that Kyle couldn't have known such a thing, at most he was just an insignificant chess piece. Kyle felt a bit regretful in his heart. He wanted to hire someone but killed a former teammate in front of others, making it impossible for anyone to believe him. However, Ors always relied on some connections to point fingers at him, which he could not bear for a long time. He easily killed him this time, but subconsciously, he didn't regret it. It was only after he finished killing that he remembered that his foolish younger brother still needed someone to take care of him, which led to the idea of inviting people to join the gang. Although the person in front of me is a paladin, his strength is only at level 0. Even with the fusion of hellish aura, it is impossible to surpass him. It is best to be a subordinate. At this moment, being pointed out by someone, he was slightly angry, but he didn't take it too seriously. However, if you don't join, you will definitely become a corpse. Kyle's grip on the knife tightened, but suddenly the knife shattered all over the ground. He widened his eyes and looked back and forth between the handle of the knife in his hand and the fragments on the ground, without feeling any attack. He threw the handle of the knife to the ground and clenched his fists. Although the combat skills of the knight profession have weapon bonuses, they are not necessarily weapons. If you are at the same level in battle, losing weapons can be considered a complete disadvantage, but facing enemies with huge differences is not something that can be compensated for with just weapons. Kyle became more vigilant and guarded against unknown enemies. He doesn't think this is what the person in front of him is doing. The only one who can achieve this level silently is the high-level extraordinary. Therefore, although his fist was always aimed at Hedera, his eyes kept drifting towards the windows and door curtains.